Today I'm going to show you guys how to make this. It's the Progress Pride Flag. Let's get to it. And wood's expensive, so we're using pallet wood. Now we have some half-decent lumber, planed and squared. You're going to need 11 boards, 3.5 inches wide, about 36 inches long, and the thickness doesn't really matter, but make sure they're all the same. 6 of the boards will be the classic rainbow, and then the remaining 7 are going to be cut in half, and then painted, and then those will be the angled ones. Small correction on the width, I decided to do 3.25 instead of 3.5. You can make it 3.5 wide, but I decided to just do 3.25 because it works out better with the wood that I have, but any size actually works. Got done running them through the planer. Now they're all the same thickness and width. Now we just got to make them all the same length with the chop saw. Cutting these all to 36 inches like I mentioned before, but I did notice that this one has some pretty big knot holes in it. I personally like them. You can take them out, try to find wood that doesn't have them, but I like to leave them in because it gives it a little bit of character. And there we go, all 36 inches. I've got one that's a little bit shorter. This is going to be one of the arrow pieces. The arrow pieces don't need to be 36 inches. I would say cut about 20 inches just to give yourself a little bit of play, but they'll end up being around 16 inches. Now we're going to make the arrow pieces, which are just the same as the stripe pieces, but they're cut directly in half, and then put a 45-degree angle on them. Remember, our strips are 1.25, so 1/2 of that would be 1 5/8. The strips are cut in half. We're going to mark a 45 degrees, set it on the miter saw, and then we're going to cut it out. To line your arrow stripes up, I like to mix and match them so they're not mirrored on each side, but you can do that if you wanted to. As you can see, this is what I mean by them being a little bit long. These were cut to 36 inches, but you really only need like 15. What we're going to do at this point is we're going to glue all of the seams together, as well as the center. If you wanted to put a backing on it, you can. That's what I'm going to do. I'll show you how to do that in just a moment. This part is optional. This is the backing piece that I was talking about. It's just a piece of plywood. These can be a little bit flimsy if you just put them on the flag by themselves. So what I like to do is you flip them over, put a little bit of glue on the bottom, and a little bit of glue on the seam, and then you put them all together, and then you'll cut all the angles, and then you'll take that triangle, and then you'll put that on the pride flag. Alternatively, you can just glue the seams and then put it right on the flag as well. Just to speed the process up a little bit, I'm going to glue each piece like I said before, and then I'm going to use a nail gun, a brad nailer, and I'm going to nail each piece to the backing piece, and then that way it'll dry, but I can still play with it while it dries. Alrighty, we got the stripes that create the arrows. As you can see, they are glued on the bottom. You can't really see that, but there are brad nails that are attached to the backboard. Now we're just going to cut it across the bottom, make it nice and square, and then we'll move on to the rainbow part. From this point on, anytime you're trying to cut this piece, make sure you're aware of those brad nails. Keep eye on them, because you don't want to mess your saw up. If you're not using brad nails, then you don't have to worry about it. Now for painting the arrow, you have two options. You could either glue it first and then paint it. You'll have to tape it off. There's a little bit more of a process, but it comes out a little bit cleaner. Or you do it the easier way. You paint it first and then you glue it. But I find that there's some glue spillage and then you'll have to cut it, so there's some sawdust that could happen. As long as you let it dry, it should be fine. I'm trying to do this kind of quickly, so I'm doing it this way. I'm going to tape it off and it'll be a little bit cleaner, but neither of those are bad options. We're going to take our 6 rainbow boards. We're going to line them with what we think is going to look good. Now take your triangle, you're going to put it on the rest of the stripes, and then you're going to trace it right along the edge here. You got to make sure that this is nice and straight. And you got to make sure that the arrow point is directly in the center of the 6 stripes. Now that that's all traced out, you have nice 45-degree angles all the way on all of these boards. We're going to take it back to the miter saw, we're going to cut these out, and then we'll have the perfect groove. Now we have the edges all mitered up. I'm going to go wash my hands because we're about to do some painting, and you always want to wash your hands before you do some painting. Now that I got some clean hands, let's go to the paint cabinet. We're going to grab our favorite rainbow paints. I prefer using stains whenever possible, but stains don't come in this wide variety of flavors, so we're going to go ahead and use some spray paint. I find it useful to lay the flag out the way it's supposed to be and then lay the paint cans on each of the stripes that represent the color. So purple's on this stripe, blue on this one, red on that one, etc. Now it's time to paint. Also, now's the time that if you don't like these holes from where the nails were from it being pallet wood, to go ahead and use wood filler. Fill it up and then sand it before you paint. Now the rainbow is all painted and it looks great. A little pro tip, because I just had this issue, make sure that before you trim the excess off the arrow, you line the bottom strip and the top strip, and that's where you're going to make your cut. Because if you cut it too early and you don't line that up, it's just not going to line up. And I'll show you what that looks like. Before I show you what I messed up on, let me go ahead and demonstrate here. Keep in mind how the purple is lined up with the black, the brown, and the blue. The blue and the brown kind of make a point, and these are at a 45-degree angle, whereas the point on the blue is at a 45-degree angle on the other side. Keep that in mind. Let me show you how I got it wrong. So if you hold this up, you can see the black won't be cut right, the brown won't be cut right, and the blue won't be cut right. And that's because I cut this part too early. Make sure that when you cut it, you have all the rainbow parts and the arrow parts flush along the top, flush along the bottom. Make sure these are 45-degree angles, and make sure blue and brown are making a point. And now I won't be able to use this part for the current flag because this is too small. I could still use this, I'm not throwing it away. All I got to do is make a flag with smaller stripes for the rainbow, and I'll be able to use this. The next step, put the triangle aside, and then we're going to be making sure that all of these angles are flush because we're going to be gluing down the rainbow part. It's super useful to have one of these big framing squares to make sure everything's flush, but you don't necessarily need it. You could just kind of eyeball it, but make sure that you are as correct as possible, because if that goes awry when you put the triangle on at the end, it's not going to line up super well. Basically what we're going to be doing is we're going to be putting glue on each seam. So we're going to be putting on the bottom of red and the top of orange, bottom of orange, top of yellow, and so on. Alternatively, if you have enough clamps, I like to put them into pairs and then just focus on like red and orange, for example, glue them together, clamp, 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 and then let it dry. And then at the end, all the pairs will be clamped together with glue on each side. And now I have these. I have 3 sets of 2. Once each pair are dry, I will take each pair and glue the 3 sets together, and I will have the one rainbow part of the flag. In the meantime, I'm going to wash my hands because I'm about to do some painting. I'm going to tape off and paint the triangle. So yeah, let's get to it. Actually, before I do the painting, I'm going to go ahead and sand this a little bit because it's not entirely flush. This is the last time that you can sand it before you paint, so this is a good time to get all that stuff out of the way. So for the black, I don't actually have black spray paint, so I'm going to be using black stain. I got it all taped off. Make sure you're very careful with this because you don't want any spillover onto the other colors. You'll just dip and rub. You can use a paintbrush for this, or the sponge paintbrushes, but I just use a towel just because I'm not doing a whole lot. I'm just doing these 2 stripes, and yeah, that's really all you need. It's not perfect. I had a little bit of problems here and there. Luckily it's on the brown stripes. I just got to be more careful on the next one. It'll just look like extra dark spot on the brown. For this particular project, I do prefer using spray paint because stain has a little bit of a tendency to bleed even through the tape. While the black stain is drying, I'm going to tape off and do the pink. Now, as you can see, I went ahead and I painted on the rest of the arrow stripes. I got the brown and the blue, looking nice and good. I also added the white. Then all there was to do left was to glue together the 3 sets of 2 stripes, and then glue together all the stripes to the arrow or the triangle. And here's a sneak preview of a future build. And finally, the finishing touches. We're going to go ahead and do 3 coats of polyurethane, and then we'll flip this over. We're going to torch the back. We're going to add some supports onto the back. And then we're going to add some hangers. I just used a simple cable and some screws. This one's for our client, so I went ahead and put my emblem on there. And yeah, all done. And there we go. Flag is all done. It's looking good. Thank you for watching. Hope it helps.